The untimely death of Luciano Pavarotti on the 6th of September 2007 has left a huge void among the fraternities of music and opera lovers the world over. Here in Ireland, this larger-than-life tenor is remembered with great affection. At University College Dublin, Professor Deirdre O'Grady, head of Italian Studies and an expert in the world of opera, sums up Luciano Pavarotti's links with Ireland.
Ireland has played a very important role in the development of the international tenor Luciano Pavarotti. His performances in our country were fundamental to his development as an artist and as a stage presence. But he came to Ireland very early in life, as a teenager, to perform at the Cork International Choral Festival. And it was in 1963 that he was engaged by Colonel Bill Kelly for the Dublin Grand Opera Society under the baton of Napoleone Anovazzi to sing the Duke in Rigoletto. In spite of a less than enthusiastic critique from Charles Acton, he nevertheless was re-engaged the following season for La Traviata. I was then a schoolgirl and I was fortunate enough to hear him in both roles. I remember particularly his Traviata, his Alfredo, with Margherita Rinaldi. These were the highlights of his early career, because it was as a result of this work that he was engaged by Covent Garden and by Richard Bonning to accompany Joan Sutherland on her tour of Australia. He then made his international career, basing himself in Italy at La Scala, singing at the Arena in Verona, and throughout Europe. I heard him when I was a student in Milan in 1968 as Tonio in La Figlia del Reggimento. And for me, this is the highlight of Pavarotti's career, because he was then a refined lyric tenor with a wonderful upper register, with a series of high Cs that were absolutely thrilling. Later in Il Trovatore in Verona, he proved the heroic qualities of his voice. And then he returned to Ireland on the concert stage. He was no longer at his very best or in his prime, but he was at the height of his work, bringing opera to the masses. I was fortunate enough to meet him after his recital in 1990, and it was a memorable occasion. We're all mourning Luciano, but he lives forever. In my opinion, he really was the voice of our generation.
The world of culture, both in Italy and abroad, could not but celebrate the memory of this great tenor. To talk about him is Professor Bruno Busetti, Director of the Italian Cultural Institute in Dublin.
I had the opportunity to meet and work with Luciano Pavarotti in Sweden in 1991. He was in Sweden to perform Verdi's Requiem at the Globen. At that time I was working at the local Italian Cultural Institute as an attaché. I was not a director. And the director was away for holidays, and the ambassador entrusted me to be the shadow of Pavarotti. I remember I was terrorized because I imagined I was to deal with a spoiled opera star, and I was expected to please his caprice. Well, moreover, the size of his body didn't help either, I must be honest. His large eyebrows made him look like an ogre, you say. I remember I met him at the entrance of the hotel. We shook hands and he won immediately my confidence because of his luminous smile from one ear to the other. And he told me, You're Bruno, isn't it? The ambassador told me you're going to be my help. I hope you like the opera and you can tolerate me. Well, I remember I spent 3 days with him and I became his shadow. I was literally conquered by his kindness and savoir-faire. Apparently, no problems seemed to upset him. At this point, I have to make clear that the Requiem in Stockholm was not to be performed in a church or in a theatre. The Globen is a stadium for ice hockey with 25,000 seats. The stadium was and still is contained in a huge steel ball, where the acoustics, of course, are not perfect and they are difficult to obtain. Panels had to be adjusted all the time in order to bring acoustics to perfection, I say. During rehearsals, Pavarotti was always very calm, even when the results were not excellent. I expected the Italian tenor to scream like an eagle, but he didn't. He was like an humble customer waiting service from a clumsy shop assistant. So he never complained, but he just gave suggestions. Please do this, do that. And incredible to say, with his partners, he was so sweet, and really he paid always homage and compliments. Water was a constant presence around him, even because of the dryness of the air due to the cold of the ice of the stadium. And well, why do I tell you this episode? Because I think this was the turning point when Pavarotti shifted a little bit from opera only to pop music. The Globen for him was no longer a small church, as I said, or a theatre where only some happy few could enjoy his performance. It was a stadium with 25,000 seats, and I will never forget the Te Deum of the Requiem. There were 3,000 elements composing the choir. The trumpets were not 4 but 24, so imagine what was performed on that day. What shall I say more? At the reception, after the concert, of course I went to the maestro and congratulated him. He just told me, Bruno, I'm leaving tonight. I wish you good luck in your life. I hope to meet you as a director somewhere else. And honestly, this nice photo and this autograph, this signature, witness the friendship and the pleasure of working with Luciano in 1991, when I was younger.
In Ireland, Luciano Pavarotti will be mostly missed in operatic circles. After all, Ireland was like the diving board towards the megastar status that Pavarotti achieved in his career. To remember him is Veronica Dunn, a famous Irish opera singer.
Pavarotti is gone, but his voice will live forever. That glorious voice, how he produced those wonderful sounds, is a lesson to every young student. He was able to maintain the vowels in each word he sang and used his tongue to sustain it on the roof of the mouth without pushing it out of his mouth. And he kept all this sound in his magnificent face, like a big cave, like Jaws. It was wonderful, wonderful. And it was so easy. He used to lift his cheeks, and I can just see him there now, and it sort of, una furtiva lagrima. He smiled, but it meant it stayed inside in the bone structure. and how he controlled his breath, the right energy of air, like a pyramid, to hold that vowel on the tongue to the roof of the mouth and resonate that sound, which was heavenly. People say he was not a great musician, but by God, he knew technique, and every note he sang was beautiful. I remember years ago meeting Beniamino Gili when I was in Italy studying, and he said to me, remember, even a scale, every note you sing must be beautiful. And that's what Pavarotti did. There are three tenors. He was lyrico. You had Jose Carreras, who was lyrico spinto. And then you had Domingo, who was, I would say, primarily a baritone. And then he was able to bring up his baritone voice. But he's a fantastic voice. And they all had fantastic voice. You can't say one is better than the other, because it's a different fac, each voice. And we can go back to the world football way back, when we heard the three of them singing in concert from the Caracalla in Rome. And you heard three magnificent voices. But Pavarotti, Domingo had great personality, so had Pavarotti, but he was such a great musician, I think, that he was able to, it's a bigger sound he made, and he excited people. Where Pavarotti made such beautiful sounds, he was equally exciting. And Carreras, who gave so much, in fact, God love him, he was in the middle. You had excellent technique for a lyric tenor. Lyrico spinto, he pushed the voice, Carreras did. Where Domingo used his body, his diaphragm, pressed down so much and made the body sound stronger. And his top notes, I would say a top B flat or B natural, that would be C, C bemol, and C would be his limit. Top do, yes, perhaps, but where Pavarotti had this ease to go up the scale, and the wonderful thing was that from middle C up, there's 2 octaves, and even he sang in some Don Bastino, there was a top E flat on that, and he was able to reach that, but it meant nothing to him. I think not knowing music, for us to teach a student, don't look at the piano. It's a sound. And when I was in Italy studying, they didn't want you to know where the top do was. It was just a sound. And this wonderful bel canto that we have in Italy is still living on in Pavarotti, in every recording.
Sarò